I speak, I like to always start with at least one verse from Scripture. I'm not really going to do it exactly the same way this morning as I normally do. This morning, I'm going to start, instead of with one verse from Scripture, I'm going to start with 7 verses from Scripture. And I'm going to continue. I'll tell you what those verses are first, and then I'm just going to read from all of them, one right after the other. I'm going to be reading from Leviticus 19:18, Matthew 19:19, Matthew 22:39, Mark 12:31, Mark 12:33, James 2:8, Galatians 5:14. And there's a reason that I'm reading all of these. And I hope by the time we get to the end of what I'm having to talk about, you'll understand the reason that I wanted to read them all. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against any among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Honor your father and mother, and love your neighbor as yourself. And second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these. To love him with all your heart, with all your understanding, with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices. If you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing right. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself. And about 3 weeks ago, we started a new section in the newsletter. And that section was called Points to Ponder. And I want to thank Susan. She's been contributing to that recently and has for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I want to start today with a point to ponder. And I'll give you the quote and ask you to keep this in mind while I'm speaking today as a point to ponder. And I'll remind you of it again when we get to the end of what I have to say. Individually, we are one drop. Together, we are an ocean. And the title of my lecture today is Unconditional Love. Many times we've heard the term, everyone is on a journey. Everyone is walking their own path, walking the path, walking the spiritual path. Many times we've heard the term expressed in different ways, but just what is walking the spiritual path? When you hear people say that someone is walking the spiritual path, what path are they talking about? Path of the spiritual seeker. So what is the spiritual seeker? What is the path the spiritual seeker is walking? What does walking the spiritual path really mean? Well, I believe that it means that they're walking the path of love. Most of you know from correspondence with me that the way I usually sign my correspondence is peace, love, and light. And I almost always use that term on any emails or anything else that I send. So, with that in mind, learning how to love is the goal and the purpose of spiritual life. Not learning how to develop psychic powers, not learning how to bow, not learning how to chant, not learning how to do yoga, not learning how to meditate, but learning how to love. Love is the truth. Love is the light. The spiritual seekers are walking the path of love. The spiritual seeker is seeking to find the path of love, follow the path of love, understand love, and most of all, find unconditional love. The purpose of all the different modalities are to help the spiritual seeker find one thing, the path of love. So when I said what I said before, I didn't mean that we shouldn't attend classes on spiritual life, on psychic abilities, on increasing our intuitive abilities, yoga, chanting, any modality whatsoever. All I'm saying is, what do those things lead to? What are all of those classes trying to teach us? What are all of those classes opening us up to? They're opening us up to understand and love. That's the whole purpose of the meditation, developing your psychic abilities, developing your intuitive abilities, developing yourself, is to open yourself to the path of love. Ultimately, the goal is to teach unconditional love. So if ultimately the goal is to teach unconditional love, then what classes teach this? What classes teach unconditional love? The answer is none. What religion teaches unconditional love? The answer is none. They all have filtering systems through which they teach. So their ability to teach unconditional love is very limited. What is love? Love has many definitions, as there are people. Do I know what love is? No. Do I know what love is? No. Over my lifetime, I've experienced many changing definitions of love, particularly as related to what I'm going to call personal love. Personal love is love as each of us relates to it on a physical level. Impersonal love. Impersonal love is unconditional love. Unconditional love is the creative essence of life, expressing as acceptance. Manifestation. Love manifests as attraction. Such love in everyday life can be viewed as acceptance. Love and life are ever-changing. Ever-changing love is personal love. Let's say that again. Ever-changing love is personal love. Impersonal love, unconditional love, is unchanging and never-ending. Unconditional love is unchanging and never-ending. We usually think of Jesus as the greatest example of unconditional love. Jesus said, "Love your neighbor as yourself." But that's not the way I learned it. I grew up in the Methodist church and I grew up in the Baptist church. And ever since I was a small child, I understood that to say, love your neighbor, not yourself. Understand what I just said? I understood that to mean love your neighbor, not yourself. Did Jesus say that? No. Remember the passages I read to you? Not a single one of them said that. But that's how I remember being taught in the churches that I attended. I was told I must be selfless, not selfish. And I know every one of you listening to me were told that at some point in your life. You must be selfless, not selfish. Remember all the scriptures I read earlier? Some words may have differed between them. However, the essence was always love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus did not say love your neighbor instead of yourself, but as yourself. So Jesus was telling us that first, love is self-acceptance. He was telling us that we cannot love our neighbor if we do not love ourselves first. So how do we learn to love ourselves so that we can move to self-acceptance? Meditation and intuitive development practices. Meditation and intuitive development practices. Remember what I said at the beginning, and now I'm saying here, meditation and intuitive development practice. How do we learn unconditional love? Meditation? No. We learn to love ourselves through meditation and intuitive development practices. You hear what I said? I want to make sure I get this point across. We learn to love ourselves through meditation and intuitive development practices. How do we learn unconditional love? Through meditation? No. 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 We cannot learn unconditional love through meditation. Meditation teaches us how to be quiet, to be receptive, to be passive, to go within, to listen. Meditation teaches us self-acceptance and self-love. Learning unconditional love is not passive. Learning unconditional love is not passive. To learn unconditional love, we need to practice love with those who give us difficulty expressing love. What we usually do is run from them, blame them, be hostile towards them, instead of being non-judgmental and loving towards them. It's easy to be accepting and loving while you're sitting in a meditation class with everyone else who's being loved and accepted. It's easy to be accepting and loving when you're sitting by a lake, meditating with no one else around. We will not really know unconditional love has been internalized until we test it out in life. When we ask, we will receive. We will get the lessons we need to learn unconditional love. What we need to do is view those lessons as our friends. Accept those lessons as our friends. Accept hard times, difficulties as our lessons to learn unconditional love. Forgiveness is a very important part of this process. Forgiveness is the transmutation of thought. Forgiveness is a complete letting go. When we talk about forgiveness, let's talk a moment about forgiveness versus unconditional love. To say you're going to forgive is to say that the other has sinned or that you have judged them in some manner. Say that again. Now think about this one too. You already got one point to ponder, but think about this. To say that you're going to forgive is to say that the other has sinned or that you have judged them in some manner. To even think it. Unconditional love is not what we say, it is what we do. Unconditional love is not what we say, it's what we do. So what stands in the way of our expression of unconditional love? Only one thing. Ego. It is ego that says another has sinned. It is ego that judges the actions and difference of another. We must learn for ourselves. We have attracted each person who has entered our life as a part of our lesson in learning unconditional love. So what inhibits our learning of unconditional love? Our beliefs and the fact that we want someone else to do it for us. We'll say that word again. Our beliefs and the fact that we want someone else to do it for us. Some want guides and teachers to do it for them. Some want masters to do it for them. Some want a higher entity to do it for them. Some want beings from other dimensions to do it for them, to rescue them. Some seek Jesus to do it for them, to rescue them. Some even postpone love and are waiting for heaven. What we must come to realize is that we must eventually do it for ourselves. So where are the answers that we seek? Our own consciousness level creates our environment. Each and every person in our life has been attracted to us by our own thinking at a very deep level, and that is where we need to be looking. Look within, not without. All the levels of consciousness and love which we seek are inside of us. In those moments when love is not our experience, we are trapped by our past thinking. Our illusions of selfishness, possessiveness, revenge, jealousy, guilt, fear, or anger. Our life, our lessons are a process of stripping away the outer so that the inner true nature as a being of love and light may rise to the surface. There's an old saying that everyone I'm talking to has heard numerous times before, but I'm going to repeat it again, cliche or not, or whatever, okay? Life is like an onion. You must peel it one layer at a time, and sometimes you cry. So in essence, we must change our perspectives, and we must begin to see our lessons as friends. As I opened, I would like to close with reading from Scripture. And I'm reading now from Galatians 5:14. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. You must learn to love yourself first before you can learn to love another unconditionally. And our point to ponder was, individually, we are one drop. Together, we are an ocean. Thank you for allowing me to share today.